In this video, we'll be going over some of the ways that we can use the TI NSpire calculators that we have in class to help us with graphing linear functions. The first thing we need to do is to get into our graph. To do that, from wherever we are on the calculator, we can use this button on the left side that looks like a calculator with some lines next to it to switch applications between a calculator and a graph. If we're at the home screen or anywhere else, we press this button, it will take us to those two areas. So we want to go to our graph, and then we need to enter a function. So to graph a function, first we need to have a function. So let's say we had something in the form of 2x plus 4y equals 8. We need this to be in the form of slope-intercept, so we need a y equals mx plus b format. We're going to rearrange this by taking away 2x from both sides, and have 4y equals negative 2x plus 8. And then we need just a single y, so we can divide everything by 4. So I could type into the calculator y equals negative 2x plus 8 all over 4. That would work. Or I can simplify my fractions and type in y equals negative 1/2 x plus 2 by simplifying my negative 2 over 4 and my positive 8 over 4 into negative 1/2 and positive 2. So either of those options will work for typing in the calculator. Now we're going to go over to our calculator where we have this function at the top. So it says our first function of x equals. We could have multiple functions. That's what the 1 means here. And we'll type in what we came up with in our equation. So to get a stacked fraction, we do control divide. And then we're going to put negative 1/2, remembering that the black minus is negative and the white minus is subtraction, so we need to use the black minus 1, press the down arrow, put 2 on the bottom, press the right arrow to get out of the fraction, and type in x, which is down in the keyboard, and then we have a plus 2. So this is our function. When we press enter, it'll appear on the graph. And now we can do some things with this. One, we see a label that tells us that's the function that we typed in, and it types it in here just like we had typed it. And then we can find points on that graph by using a table. So if you see over here the third item to look at, opening the table with Control T, we press Control and then T down on the keyboard, and we get a table of values. On the left it has our x values, and on the right it has our f of x values, which are like y values. We can use the arrows to navigate within this, and we can see our y-intercept is at 2 because x is 0 and y is 2. We can also find our x-intercept, or our 0 of the function, at x equals 4, y equals 0. We can see all kind of different points. As we go up in x values or down in x values, we get different y values. Now, to get out of the table, we hit Control T again. We can also add additional functions onto the same graph. That's not necessary yet, but we will have instances where we need to have multiple functions. So to add another one, we can go to Menu, and then Graph Entry, and then Function. So this is going to give us the same kind of dialog that we already had, but with f2 of x. So this is a second function. We could put in something like y equals 2x plus, let's do minus 2x minus 5. So we get another graph here that has a positive 2 slope and negative 5 y-intercept. If we do Control T to go back to our table, we now can use our right arrow to navigate over to our F2, or left to go back to F1, and we can see the table of values for both of these. So if we go up here, we can see again our y-intercept when x equals 0, y equals negative 5. And then in this one, our x-intercept, or our 0, falls between negative 2 and 3 on the x. So it happens halfway between these, so it would be at 2.5. So we can see both of our functions here. If we add additional functions, we can use the arrows to navigate between them and see any number of functions at once. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is if we have a function that doesn't fit nicely within this window. You see that the default by x goes negative 10 to positive 10, y goes negative 6 2/3 to positive 6 2/3. But what if we go and add another function? So we're going to add a third function here, f3 of x, and we'll make this one a fraction slope. Let's make it 2/5, so 2 over 5, and then go over and put our x. And let's make it have a y-intercept that's well above our screen here. So let's do plus 15. That's going to be, when I hit enter, way up off of the screen. I can't even see that it appeared. But if I go to the table, I can see that f3 of x is now on the graph as well. I can go through my table, look at my values. I can look for my x-intercept or my 0. Way up here, it would be halfway between negative 38 and negative 37. So negative 37.5. But if I want to see it on the graph, I need to change the size of this window. And I do that again by going to Menu. And this time we're going to go to the next option down, which is Window/Zoom. There's a bunch of different options. The one that we want here is Zoom to Fit. Zoom Fit is going to zoom out enough that we can see all of the functions that are currently graphed. So when I click that one, we're going to see now all 3 of our functions at the same time. We still can't see some points of interest, like if we wanted to see where the red and the black intersect, we can't quite see that. So if we wanted to, we could just zoom out by going to Menu, Zoom, and then go to number 4, which is Zoom Out. When we do that, it asks us what center we want to zoom out from. So we can just pick the origin to zoom straight out, and then we see those intersections and we can see more of our graph. To get out of the zoom function, we can press escape, and then we are back to normal. So we can see all these values in our table, and now I'm going to look at checking with relations. So we talked about everything down to this third from the last, which is checking relations. Let's go back to our blue function that we started with. I'm going to go to Menu and Graph Entry again, but instead of function, we're going to go down to relation. On relation, you see it doesn't say f of x equals, it says relation 1 in terms of x and y. This is going to let us type in an equation like we started with, our 2x plus 4y equals 8 that we have over on the left. We can type that in directly here. We can put 2x plus 4y is equal to 8. When we press enter, it's going to graph that, and notice that it overlapped the blue function. So the label appeared right next to it, and it highlighted this to say that this was basically this on top of that one. That's a good way for us to check if our slope-intercept format matched the original, and if we did the algebra correctly over on the left side to rearrange it. We still need to be able to do that algebra because showing our work is a lot of the credit that we get on quizzes and tests. And also when we do a relation, there's a difference from functions in that it doesn't appear in the table. So when we go to the table and we look, we have F1, F2, and F3, but we don't have a column for our relationship. So we only have F1, 2, 3, no relation in this table. So if you just graphed it from the 2x plus 4y equals 8 and didn't put in the slope-intercept format, you wouldn't be able to find values on the table. All right, so let's look at how to clear all of this off. We can go to Doc and then the letter B for blank. You can also scroll down to the bottom and it says B is clear scratchpad. So we click B and that takes us back into the calculator, and if we go back and forth we see the calculator and the graphs are both cleared out. So let's draw that relation one more time. We're going to go to Menu, Graph Entry Relation, and we're going to put in 2x plus 4y equals 8 and graph it. Let's go back to the table. We can see there's nothing in the table, so it says there's no functions available. That means that we can't look at that table of values because we didn't put it in slope-intercept as a function. We put it in as a relationship. What we can do, however, is we can go to trace the graph. So this is our last thing to look at. If we go to Menu and then Trace, we can go to Graph Trace. So Menu 5.1 in Graphing. And we get a little cursor that we can move with the arrows. We can go to the right, and it will tell us the points as we go along. So this is similar to the table, and it will lock in on certain interesting points like the y-intercept and the x-intercept, which is called the 0 of the function. So that is a useful thing to do, especially with relations, because it lets you see points on the graph without having that table available. There are more things we can do in graphing. There's some analyzing we can do. Some of these will be important later in the year. Intersections, minimums, maximums, those will be of interest later. And then tracing, we pretty much want to do graph trace. So the main functions we looked at here were graphing functions in or slope-intercept format, graphing relations where we have x and y format, zooming out and zooming to fit all of our functions, tracing along the graph, and then that's pretty much what we're looking at currently. So those are our beginner functions for using the graphing calculator. And the last thing we talked about, remember, was pressing dock and then the letter B to blank out the scratch pad and the graph. So hopefully that's a good introduction to graphing, and we will get into some of the more advanced functions later in the year.